Hey guys, it's Simon here with Hobbies of Man. Once again, and today we're doing another episode of the Sword and Sorcery Book Club. Today we're looking at Conan number 21. This is by Dan Panosian, that's the cover there. And of course, this is written by Jim Zub. And the art here is by Fernando Dañino, who does an amazing job. I think Jim recently met him because he was in Spain. And, well, that's pretty awesome. I think that's exciting that they got to meet in person. I wish I could have gone there, but it was all the way in Spain. I think it was in Madrid. And I think Rob Del Toro didn't show up, but everyone else that has worked on Conan that's from Spain, that's worked with Titan, was there, right? I think, if I remember correctly. Otherwise, before we get into this, I do want to mention that Howard Days is coming up. It's tomorrow, as of recording this. And this should come out this day that I'm recording it. So today is the 12th of June, tomorrow's the 13th, and Saturday is the 14th. And that is when Howard Days is happening this year. I will be there. And actually, I'll be joined by Stygian Dogs. He came into Dallas today, I think. And I'll go pick him up tomorrow before we head out to the event. And we'll be there for both days. And I think after that, we might hang out a bit before he decides to go back to where he goes, where he is from, right? So that's exciting. If you guys are interested, or if you're going, please feel free to come talk to us. I'm sure Stygian Dogs is a much more popular, guy to approach, but I'll be there if you guys are interested. And I'm happy to talk about Conan. I'll probably stick around Jeff because I want to pick his brain about some of the archaeological stuff that's been happening lately, especially about the pyramids, because they found potentially kind of like a hidden chamber within them, or some kind of stuff that relates to like the Atlantis theory and stuff like that. So that's exciting. But that's really all there is to say about that. I will be doing this review today, and if I can manage it, I will have the review for Conan Eastern Horizons, which was the book that came out kind of randomly on the 21st of May on Sunday. If I can't get it on Sunday, I'll do it on Monday, and then sometime Wednesday probably, I'll do a video recap of my time at Howard Days. So let's get into it. This is an awesome issue. This really is kind of like the return to kind of your standard feeling from Jim Zub. I think it's been a while since it felt this way. I think that some of the stuff that was happening before, with Danica Brine and with Doug Braithwaite, kind of didn't feel quite right. It didn't feel bad or anything, but it felt a bit more stilted than usual. But this is kind of back to the normal kind of fast-paced, awesome feel, and it references chapters 9 through 12 of the series as well, when Conan was down in the Thurian Age, right? So this book kind of centers in on Conan right after the Veil of Lost Women, which is a story that is kind of mired in a lot of racism compared to most of his other stories. A lot of people think that it was a Western that got retooled into a Conan story. A lot of people think that it was a story that was just a draft that wasn't really ready. And I can't believe all of that. But to me, what that story reads is as a pastiche of Tarzan, if that makes sense. I can't remember when the dates were, but I think Tarzan comes out a few years before Conan comes to play, and some of the language that Robert E. Howard uses is directly taken from Edgar Rice Burroughs. And this kind of idea of a white woman, taken by an African tribe, and then our hero character, who's kind of like a man-beast himself, attacking these African tribes and then taking the white woman with him, feels very similar to things that we see in Tarzan, right? I don't think that there's necessarily a specific scene like this, but it's reminiscent of some of the early interactions with Tarzan and Jane. It's reminiscent of Korak and Miriam, and obviously it's kind of that vibe, right? And the racism also kind of feels pretty Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of textured, right? And it's a bit of a shame that story is that way. It's also understandable. It's 100 years old, and over more than 100 years old, and it's fine, but it's just kind of, it doesn't feel correct for Conan. I mentioned that when I reviewed it initially on my other channel, right? So the story in that case is that Conan finds a young woman, Livia, who is taken by this African tribe who is cannibalistic and evil and, you know, all sorts of bad stuff. And he was joined, like Conan was joined by this other African tribe that was fighting with these people, right? And so he sides with them, he attacks this bad tribe, he takes Libya with him, and then they go off into the sunset after they experience this weird, like, ghostly woman circle that then calls in this crazy beast, which is this one that we see right here. Right there, right? And so Conan and Libya leave, and Conan is, you know, followed by the tribe that he helped. And as they move through Kush and Stygia, they end up in this kind of small town where something feels off. This is a bit similar to maybe some of the mythical legends from Greece, you know, maybe some of the stuff when, I can't remember what hero it was, but they end up in Circe's island, or maybe some of the Odysseus stuff where they kind of deal with the Black Lotus people, right? Something like that. It feels like this is really taking in some of that traditional Greek mythology inspiration, some of that classical stuff, and it also kind of feels a little bit like Suthal of the Dusk, right? Where these characters that exist in this place just don't feel right and don't act the way they should, and just kind of feel weird, right? And Conan knows that there's something wrong here. They give them these like luau thingies, and they feed them, and Conan kind of tries to avoid eating as much as he can. Everyone else around him doesn't, and eventually he and Livia go down to their room to, you know, kind of engage in carnal relations, as you could guess. And then as she sleeps, he goes off into the night in order to investigate what's going on. And it turns out that this was a trap, and he was right. The food that was fed to these people was used in order to keep them weak, kind of similar to the Lotus stuff. And all of the people are being captured and put in cages. And as he's seeing this, he kind of has this interesting reaction here. He yells "Mother of Mithra" in this kind of horrified way. And I do want to kind of have an aside here. I don't think that this is correct for Conan. I think that I don't know who did this, right? It might have been Jim, it might have been Fernando. I don't really care. Like, it doesn't matter who did it, but in the editing process, I think that this should have been changed. Conan would not react this way to seeing people in cages. I feel like if he doesn't react to crazy monsters in a crazy way, he wouldn't react to people being caged in this way, right? Especially because the first line of dialogue here is, Conan is fearless against beasts and monsters. A physical threat, no matter how nightmarish, can be overcome with brawn and blade. And after the tumultuous supernatural events of the past few months, even a wing-born horror like this makes sense to the Cimmerian and his sword. So if he can't be scared of this because it's whatever at this point, something like this, which he's seen his whole life, should not really cause that reaction. And that's kind of the only fault I see in this. Just kind of the continuity of the character doesn't feel correct in this, just in that panel, right, in that moment. But everything else afterwards makes total sense. Conan reacts negatively. He returns to his abode. He sees that the people are being stolen, and he starts killing the people that are trying to take his, his friends. He goes further and further into these crypts, killing as many people as he can, and eventually he is overrun by as many people as it takes, right? So he is covered head to toe by the bodies of others, and eventually he is knocked out. He wakes in the crypt that he saw earlier, and when he asks, what's going on, they tell him that kindness begets kindness, which is this thing that they've been saying the whole time. And over the days, Conan tries to escape, and he constantly, attempts it, and he never succeeds. And as the days go by and his energy wanes, he tries to maintain himself by eating the least amount of food possible, so that he can, basically not be weakened too much, but also maintain his body, his mind sane, right? And everyone around him continues to grow weaker and weaker. And then suddenly one day, a woman shows up, and this woman is a Stygian woman. Her name is Amyth-Bast, and she is his new master, apparently. And it's this woman here. lovely. I love how she's made it, drawn. Fernando Dañino did a great job with this. And it turns out that she has cursed these people here with a fake happiness, the curse of kindness. And she's using it as a way to extort them, to get them to create this like slave ring. And as they're changing them from the pit to the cages, Conan reveals himself to be free. He says, I am no slave. And then the woman is excited. She's like, oh, this man still has strength, still has, his mind. This is exciting, right? And she throws a thunderbolt at him. And then he is to be sent to Keshada, which is a gladiator ring, right? And there he is to battle this character called Kumva the Carver, and he does. And it's really cool. This almost feels a little bit like Thor versus Hulk. And then as this battle is about to begin, Thoth-Amon shows up and he announces the start of the battle. And this is really exciting. This was a great issue. I loved it. I think the artwork was phenomenal. The storytelling was great. And even the variant covers were quite good in this case. I think that cover C and cover D were probably the best. Although I stayed with cover 1 or cover A because I actually really enjoyed Dan Panosian's work. But if I was someone that went out of his way to buy variant covers often, I would have probably bought variant cover D and variant cover C just because it's the one that features the female characters. And I think that they're quite good, right? So overall, I would say this is a 9.5 out of 10 issue for me. I think it's great. It's wonderful. The only issue there is that kind of lack of continuity in Conan's reactions. I don't think that he would see a pit of, sad slave people and yell Mother of Mithra in this kind of horrified way. Especially not after he was just killing this monster, right? I feel like it just doesn't make sense. That sort of reaction isn't correct. Like, Conan is not that much of a humanitarian, right? Like, he wouldn't be afraid or sad for others because he'd think, you're strong, you can do yourself, you can escape, right? And so I don't necessarily think that that's the right kind of reaction. But at the same time, it's whatever. It's not that big a deal, right? And then we have two kind of nice bits of writing here in the back. We have Jeff Shank's essay, Thoth-Amon, Sorcerer of the Black Ring, which just kind of gives us information about Thoth-Amon, how he really only showed up in one Conan story, but he is thought of as Conan's arch nemesis, and this is mostly due to the work of Elspride de Camp, Link Carter, and then later of Roy Thomas, right? And then the ferocious back and forth is an interview with Fernando Dañino. I hope that they do this, in a video. It'd be really nice. And a few of these questions are about his work, his other stuff. He mentions Smart Girl, and he mentions that he's worked on DC Comics like Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Justice League, and Suicide Squad. He talks about how the Filipino artists mostly were the ones that inspired him when it comes to Conan, and Gil Kane as well. And he talks about his creative process. It's very similar to the way that they work with Rob Del Torre, kind of like the marble method, where Jim kind of gives them an outline, they talk about it, and then the artist is able to kind of draw the way that they want. And it works out pretty well. And he talks about how he kind of adds all of this detailing, and then he realizes that he kind of killed his page, and so he goes back and adds different detailing in order to try to pop it back up to life, right? And then he talks about what kind of spread is his favorite, which is this one here of Conan carrying the young woman, Livia. And he also talks about the fact that there's really only one way to draw Conan, and if you don't draw it that way, he kind of doesn't look right. And I don't necessarily agree, but I don't necessarily think he's wrong either, because between this work and the previous work, I think he has improved his abilities to draw Conan quite a lot. There was a few different moments in the Savage Sword of Conan issue, I think it was 4, where he draws Conan, where Conan doesn't look quite right. But in this one, he looks perfect. I think he does an amazing job there. So Fernando Dañino's ability to draw Conan has skyrocketed. He's amazing, and everything here is wonderful. The artwork is great. The colors are really good here by, I think it's Diego Rodriguez. And the storytelling was awesome, and I'm very excited to see where we go from here, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts on Conan number 21. I'll see you guys at Howard Days this weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys later.